This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman.
This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond.
And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 398 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend and brother, Liam. Liam, we are wrapping up a stay in the future.
The future, Cal?
That's right. 50 years from now, whenever now is, or I don't know. This is going to be a long episode. So, well, hopefully not a long episode, but we have another exciting double feature. The future double feature. We should have just branded it that, but thankfully, as we talked about last week, not only is this the final of our series of Zeta Project double feature episodes, it is the penultimate review of the Zeta Project for this show, at least new reviews, probably reviews altogether, but definitely new reviews. And I'm excited to get this one over with, Liam, as we have a pair of episodes today, one of which I think I might nominate for one of the worst pieces of animated television in human history. Got a pair of the Zeta Project episodes going. Let's go.
Absolutely here, Cal. The distinction of this being our final ever Zeta double feature, as after today we have but one episode remaining in this cursed series to talk about. What a pair to go out on with The River Rising and The Hologram Man. What a duo to discuss, to say the least.
Yes, indeed. What a pair of just a great treat to enjoy today for our reviews. But yes, we will get to the official IMDb synopsis for our first episode review here in just a second, which of course is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to encourage us as we get through the editing process of these episodes and or the slog that has become reviewing Zeta Project episodes, please head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and support the podcast today. Become a one-time supporter, or you can become a monthly supporter at one of our 3 monthly supporter tiers. Of course, if you join our Super Friend tier, you get the opportunity to ask us a question about the review that we are doing that week, or in this case, reviews that we are doing that week. And if we select your question, we'll answer it on the air. Get to hear it answered right here by yours truly and Liam's truly. So whether you want to become a one-time supporter of the podcast or get your opportunity for your question to be answered on the air of the next episode that we record, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, and please consider supporting the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for our first of 2 episodes, The River Rising, written by Joseph Kerr and Paul Diamond. That's right, 2 people were involved with this. Directed by Kurt Gaeta, with music by Lolita Ritmanis and animation by DR Digital Co. And that synopsis reads as such. Zeta and Rho hide out in a village that doesn't tolerate technology.
Honestly, that's as good as the episode is, I'd say. C-.
Yeah, the correct amount of effort was put in.
Yes, I agree. Spoiler alert of the 2 episodes. This is the one that I think should be flushed from the record books when it comes to episodes of animated television. We'll, of course, our contractually obligated brief recap of our own here for the synopsis. So as we open up here, of course, what do we have but a chase sequence as Rho and Z are on the run, of course, from the NSA, who are chasing them through, where else? A wooded forest, apparently set in Middle America. And they, as the NSA flies through, there's a open clearing that Zeta and Rho head towards, including what appears to be a village of young children who are dressed like they were born in the 1850s. So they're all abuzz as they see technology users headed their way. Meanwhile, the NSA ship trips a wire that releases the Ewok trap that killed the ATSTs in Return of the Jedi. A giant log comes down to smash and disorient the NSA ship, causing it to be mudlogged. So meanwhile, Ro and Zeta are able to get away and seek asylum. They disguise themselves, of course, well, Zeta does, as a child before they can be discovered that they themselves are part of this technology crew. So they meet a group that are later described as self-described no-techs, which I guess is supposed to be sort of like the Amish of the future. They do not embrace technology. There's also there's a character that has some missing teeth, so I think they're supposed to be like also poorly educated, is what the insinuation is. They very clearly are not a fan of modern technology, and because of that, they're dumb and they're idiots. So Zeta and Ro hide out among these no-tech people, and the NSA agents show up at the no-tech gates. They're informed by their leader that they are not allowed to enter without a warrant, and that this land has been given to the no-techs by the U.S. government. So there's also like a little bit of, I feel like, Native American thing here for them as well. So they do not allow the U.S. government to come in without a warrant. They turn them away and said that the people that were on the run are seeking asylum there, and they are going to protect them. So come back with a warrant if they want to interact with these two runaways that they're claiming. Agent West attempts to inform them that the robot Zeta is amongst them, but of course, he gets cut off mid-sentence by Agent Bennett, who tells him that they shouldn't be sharing that information because of how the no-techs deal with technology, saying that they would likely destroy Zeta if they found out that he was indeed a robot. So they leave reluctantly and decide what they're going to do next. Agent Bennett goes to the local judge's chambers, and more hilarity is had as they make fun of what the Middle America and farmers would be arguing about, I guess, at a courthouse. The judge says that there are other cases ahead of Agent Bennett that he has to wait around, otherwise potentially face being jailed himself. Agent Bennett insists that they need a warrant, and he should be moved to the front of the line. The judge does not cooperate with him. Meanwhile, we see Zeta, who, as I mentioned, is blending in as a child, is helping on the farm. He notices that they are building a dam with the villagers to help keep the river back. Thus, the name of the episode, The River Rising, or River is Rising, whatever it is called. And so Zeta offers some expertise, noting that there might be some flaws in their dam building. And of course, the no-tech leader scoffs at the idea that he would know anything, even though Zeta, as the child, quotes a whole bunch of facts. The guy responds basically with the jury is still out on science. So because, of course, he is not a fan of technology, he also rejects science and doesn't believe in any of that. So he scoffs at Zeta for thinking that there would be something wrong with this dam that they're building. So Zeta continues to help out. Here we see that Agent Bennett, while waiting at the courthouse, Agent West gets bored and decides that he's going to take one of the hovercraft that is in the ship that was not damaged and do a flyover of the area. And of course, the no-techs take no kindness to that, launch a whole bunch of rocks at him. So while this is happening, he's on the phone with Agent Bennett, who's able to use that call as leverage to get the judge to immediately issue a warrant. He just listens to the call and he's like, "Yep, give him a warrant immediately." So Agent Bennett quickly makes his way back to the land. Meanwhile, the rain is starting to fall. The river is rising, believe it or not. And the construction project is still going on. The rudimentary construction equipment that the no techs are using begins to break down, and this causes one of the boulders to snap off of its rope, causing an almost death. Zeta jumps in the way, however, and is actually crushed by the rock itself, saving in the process of saving a few of the villagers. And in this process, of course, it reveals that he is in fact a robot. And then we get, before I hand it off to you here, Liam, what I call, I cannot believe I just saw the borderline crucifixion of Zeta in this cartoon here. The villagers are so mad and hate robots so much. It's basically a crucifixion of Zeta. His arms are only tied behind this gigantic wooden plank, though he is not spread out on an actual cross. But it's essentially a crucifixion, and they decide that they're going to kill Zeta with a giant boulder now, thus leaving the tension here as Ro is screaming for them not to kill Zeta. It appears that Zeta is about to be killed, and the NSA is on its way now with its proper documentation to invade the no-tech's land.
Yeah, kids. You know who else was strung up by a mob who didn't understand that he was telling the truth?
Turn in your Bibles, please.
That's right. I'm sitting backwards in a chair right now. I put my hat on backwards, and we're gonna wrap, kids. No, but yes, to your point, this is the scenario we find ourselves in as Zeta is strung up by the not Amish, the no techs. They are, and they do all that bit about like Bennett needing a warrant, and then they basically don't. The agents don't really fashion into the rest of the episode because they can't get their ship unstuck. So, so yeah, from here on out, the storm gets worse. The river does in fact rise, as you said, to the point where there is flooding, and several people, including the no tech leader and his daughter, are caught in the river. Zeta is freed in sort of the confusion, is able to free himself. He pulls the roof off of one of the houses, or a section of the roof off, and jumps into the river. He saves Ro, and then they together are able to save the leader and his daughter, and he's able to save the rest of the village as they understand that they begin to understand that perhaps not all technology is bad. As Zeta saves the day here, he gets a sort of half apology from the village leader, and as the daughter dreams about perhaps one day getting to meet the outside world and how wonderful all of this technology is. The village leader says that while he may not still quite understand what Zeta is, John here believes that he perhaps does have a soul after all, and he won't be doing anything to harm him or help the agents. And in fact, as we cut away, we see that the Amish is actually helping to cover their escape, as they are shoving mud into the NSA's engines under the guise of helping them. And apparently no one from the NSA is standing on the other side of the vehicle to notice. And so the NSA is stuck in the mud, literally, as Zeta and Ro ride off into the sunset, having saved the day and perhaps taught a few lessons about the importance of not judging a robot by its metal, I guess.
And you should always embrace the use of modern technology, no matter what your concerns are.
That our good friends, Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, all of these wonderful men who own everything in our world that is doing great right now, have taught us that technology is always good. Mark Zuckerberg, all of these guys, they know what's best. Everyone knows this. And that's the lesson here, kids, is make sure you always embrace technology. And if you don't, you're kind of a bigot when you think about it.
Yep. You're a weirdo who's definitely uneducated. And you just stand. Your fear is what drives you. That's the only thing that drives you. You're dumb, you're anti-science, and you're led by your fears. So go out and get that box that you can sit in front of every night for 3 or 4 hours at a time while you hold your other box screaming a street with another screen scrolling mindlessly for hours at a time while the other box that you own controls you. So yeah, do it. This is the lesson that we're taught here, and if you don't, you're a freaking weirdo. Yeah, I gave the plot for this episode a 0. I cannot believe that this episode was premiered August the 3rd, 2002. I did not mention it. Listen, the idea of a group of people in a futuristic technology who reject technology. Okay, that is kind of an interesting premise. Like, how do they fit into society? But then blatantly making it just a pastiche for the Amish and look, it's not like the Amish are ever going to see this, so it's unlikely that the Amish are ever going to see this. So I get it. Like, they're kind of an easy target. The fact that they are made out again to be borderline, they're kind of the villains in this, and again, the leader, because sticks to his guns about the evils of technology. That, oh well, he's definitely like just not educated. That's his problem. And one of the characters, like I said, has like he introduced immediately. He has like 6 teeth in his mouth, and he like apparently smells bad and tries to like hit on Ro, and she doesn't like it, and like they go out of their way to make this guy appear to be dumb, and that's like a whole joke. Like, he's dumb. And then, like I said, when we get to the judges, the courthouse later, and the judge is giving this in the middle of some sort of case that he's overseeing, the guy is talking like Cletus from The Simpsons, real slow, and like talking about how his pig looks the same as somebody else's pig. So it's really just, I mean, it's mocking the lower educated middle America farming class. Like, that's what this whole thing was, where they're going to be the bad guys. Oh, and we're also going to make jokes at their expense about it. Ha ha, because look, they're dumb. Like, I just don't, I cannot believe in 2002, like, somebody was like, yeah, this is great. This is great television. This is hilarious. Let's inject this in this. And then I looked at Paul Diamond, who was I guess the main writer for this. I know there were two people that were assigned with this with the teleplay, but Paul Diamond also happened to write the award-winning episodes Hicksburg, Kid Genius, and Hunt in the Hub, also in this series. So at least two of those three we absolutely despised. So Kid Genius, I think, to this date holds an all-time record for one of the worst, if not the worst, episodes ever. And Mr. Diamond, I feel like, was going for something here, trying to challenge that low score. So yeah, a 0 out of 10 for my plot for this. In case I left this episode being pissed off. I could not believe. I was like, this is the worst thing I have watched this year, hands down. Like, 0% anything else. Of all the garbage television I've watched with my wife, this is the worst thing that I've seen. A children's
The Mormon wives have nothing.
Right, absolutely. Like, I would watch that 100 times before I watch this ever again. It's that bad. And the fact that this was marketed to children makes it so much worse.
Yeah, like you always think, because like I think, we made a joke a year ago or so that we were going to start reviewing episodes of the PBS show Arthur. And like, I know there's an edutainment episode about Amish people, and like, yes, they poke a little fun at how different it is, but at the end of the day, they go like, yeah, but they're not hurting anybody. This is just how they live their lives. Like that,
Right.
Which feels like that should be the real lesson here.
Right.
But it's not. It's just that like they're wrong, and if they almost all die because they inherently didn't like Zeta because he was a robot. My thought, and I know we try to avoid too often, like, quote unquote rewriting these shows, like, not, we try to talk about what they are, not what they aren't, but like for this, I'm like, what would have been funny, instead of just making them a parody of like present day Amish people, would be if they were like traditionalists for technology as it existed in 2001 or whatever. If they were like,
Right.
like if they liked cars and cell phones, but they didn't like hover cars and holograms, or like they were okay with regular robots, but not, fancy infiltration units or something. Like
Right.
if they were nostalgic for like what would have been our present day, but set
Sure.
50 years in the future, that would have at least been like kind of a funny like layer to it. But it's like,
Sure.
yeah, they're just Amish. They have like the chin beards and the hats and the vests, and like they dress that way. And like you said, they have this sort of inherent naivete to them. Yeah, it was very unsubtle, and yeah, it felt kind of mean. Like it
And
felt
like,
like I don't think Amish people are inherently doing anything wrong. Like it's a
right.
belief. Like they have their belief of why they do that. They
Yep.
do it. Doesn't make sense to me, but
Right.
they're not hurting anybody. Like
Right.
so, and again, I just feel like that should be the message, especially if you look. We've also talked about how Zeta especially has that edutainment vibe, so it feels like that should be the lesson. Is just like, well, maybe we can all learn something from each other, even if we have different lifestyles. Maybe there's something to be said for not constantly being, barraged with video games and music and all the stuff that Rose complaining about. And then also maybe there's something to say that, like, yeah, there is advantages to having technology in our lives and conveniences. So, like, you think there should be like a little give and take, but instead it's just like, no, they were wrong. They were wrong, and Zeta and Ro were right. Like,
Yeah, I just yeah, I don't like it. And I think maybe I don't know. To me it's not clear enough that this is also like a euphemism for acceptance of like people, because they harp on, they're not like anti-robot, right? They're anti-technology. So it's
mhm,
not that they're, if you wanted to make it, let's just say this is a stand-in for racism or sexism or,
mhm.
being homophobia or something like that. Like you wanted it to stand in for that, and that was the kind of story that you're telling. I don't think you can even make that comparison here because again, it's just all technology. It's like, which is exactly what the Amish people sort of reject, like is technology after a certain date or whatever it is. Like, so it really does feel like they were just out for blood for the Amish. There is even that like brief little sequence where the Roe asks like why the women are cooking, which
Mhm.
it is a patriarchal type of setup that the Amish have. That's not to be denied, but that also they like got a jab in there of like, oh well, that's so last century. It's like, okay, this is also part of how their society is set up though, and has been functioning now for hundreds of years. So if you're going to come for the Amish, you can also go to every other religion that is set up as a patriarchal religion and also do episodes on those. But I doubt that that would have been something that would have flew. So my point is that this just feels like you said mean, that they just were like they had some weird axe to grind. The writers had some weird axe to grind for the Amish and thought that this would be their chance to write and really get even with the Amish, even though like I already joked about, the Amish will not ever see this or hear this critique. Again, and I'm not saying like there's not room for joking or for making light of some of those things. We've just talked about it. Like, yeah, there are things that one of my favorite comedians, some of the jokes he makes because he's from that area of Pennsylvania, he'll make jokes about the Amish culture and I will laugh at those jokes. But I
Mhm.
think there's a difference when you go into a setting where you're expecting jokes like a comedy, comedy club or a comedy show versus this show, which is set up as sort of like an action adventure show, and it's just like added this weird commentary about why the Amish are weird people. So yeah, that's why I settled on 0 for my score. What about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 0 too, because on top of it all, it's just not the comedy's not funny. Like it's one thing to do like mean spirited comedy, but it's not even like a little bit funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah. So it's not very funny. The villain is a river, like it's a flood. It's another like
The tornado episode.
natural disaster episode. And I know we'll talk about it. But as we'll talk about in the next episode, while they may have been asked to tone down violence at times, you could still be giving us a little bit more. And
Mm-hmm.
like the fact that the only subplot is like Agent Bennett dealing with local bureaucracy, like it's My Cousin Vinny or something. But like this it's fine. It's like it's probably the best part of the episode is that and Agent West messing up the ship, but
Yep.
that's very low praise because it's just not very interesting on top of it, and it's not funny. So when it's one thing to have a comedic episode, we've talked about plenty of more comedy based episodes of these shows and that we've enjoyed over the years. And yeah, it's hard when the jokes aren't funny and there's not much else in the way of substance to it. Yeah, that's gonna end up with a really low score, or in this case, the lowest score from both of us, which is a 0 out of 10.
There we go. All right. Shall we move on at this point to
Please.
our next category, which is animation and visuals? DR Digital Co. responsible for the animation for this week. My as I cannot believe, in addition to the writing, I didn't lump this in with writing because I wanted to talk about it in animation and visuals. But as I said, I cannot believe on top of borderline, not even borderline, mocking a sect of a specific religion, did they also then include a visual that could very easily be interpreted as a parody or mocking of that religion's uh, messianic figure, in which they then decided to load Zeta up on a wooden plank and proceed to attempt to kill him with a very large rock. Yeah, I did not go into this episode looking to be offended, but again, I was just, my mouth was agape watching this. I was aghast trying to imagine how they decided to write this very clear parody of a religious group and then proceed with doing let's make that religious group who are the weirdos also then try and crucify the guy that they dislike in the end. There is like, is this supposed to be some additional commentary about how the religions that have this as their center point are also the ones quickest to crucify? Is that your, again, I don't know, and I don't care, but this was like, I was like, what are we doing? We get a shot of his legs being bound and like strapped to this wooden plank. There are points where once the flood comes over the wall too, the fence breaks apart and they look like crosses floating down the hill. I was so irritated and disturbed at this point. Maybe I was looking for things to be upset about, but I was like, I cannot believe this made it into a children's cartoon, but we couldn't have fists punching people's faces or like guys not tripping over themselves, Scooby-Doo and Super Friends style here to be foiled. But we got this in an episode. I was just absolutely flabbergasted. I was so annoyed this entire episode. The rest of the episode, there's not a ton. It's very choppy in the animation, some of the sequences. There's not a lot of movement in our characters. It's a lot of neck up shots or chest up shots where they're just kind of talking towards the screen. I settled on a 0 for animation too, just because I was so irritated with that visual. It's animation and visuals, right? That's our category.
Yeah.
And the visual of Zeta being crucified pissed me the hell off. So 0 out of 10.
That's fair.
0 out of 10.
I love that. I love that. Speak your truth. Yeah. I mean, I'm not tremendously higher. I'm at a 4 out of 10 for my visual score, just because I agreed with all of your other notes. I mean, yeah, that's a bit ridiculous. I don't understand everybody else. Like, again, even though they're dressed like at what at the time would have been modern day Amish people, everybody else is pretty normal. And then there's just like Toad from the X-Men is there, which I don't understand. Like the one kid that you mentioned, he's like this albino ginger with 4 teeth. And it's like everybody else is pretty normal and isn't missing teeth and has a normal skin complexion. So I'm not sure how. I don't know. For a second, I was gonna be like, is he a splicer? Like, what's happening here? I thought maybe we were gonna have some kind of DCAU tie-in that would make us have to give this a thumbs up for rewatchability, and that would have been hilarious. But no, there's none. He's just a weird ginger frog boy for some reason. And he's the only one dressed like that. Also, everybody else is in like button-down shirts and slacks and suspenders and suits and ties and hats and everything. And he's just like in like under like long johns. Like I don't understand how this feels like they just had a character design that they hadn't used. Like
Yep.
we know that happened with the bounty hunter character that was maybe going to be the stalker in a previous episode, but then
Mhm.
they had this bounty hunter design they hadn't used yet, so they used him instead. So I wonder if this was just like a weird kid character design that they did when they were making, well, like when they were doing pre-production on the show, and we're like, well, we're deep into season 2, we haven't found a way to use this yet, so let's just throw this kid in the Amish group. But it's like, it's weird that he's there and it's very distracting.
Yes,
um
agreed.
and then yes, I agree with what you said about the animation not being particularly interesting otherwise, and very stiff, and just, yeah, just no strong life to this. I think the best animation is on, like, there's a couple shots of the rushing rapids of the river as it's raining, and that's probably the best animated stuff, is the river itself. And unfortunately, the river doesn't have a face or a personality or anything that we should care about. So perhaps the effort went into the wrong areas. When we've talked to some of the directors over the years on our show, they talk about how, they would storyboard to the strengths, like, as far as like what types of shots they would ask for. They'd ask TMS to do things that they would never ask Sunrise to do, for instance. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't even think they could DR Digital Co., which I think is just DR Movie Co. under a previous name. They couldn't even handle this. So yeah, 4 out of 10 for me. Not quite as strong as your 0, but I am far and away not interested. I would in no way call this a disagreement.
Right. We're both you're disappointed and I'm just pissed off. So that was reflective
Fair.
of our scores. All right, let's move on to our next category, which is music. And I believe you said Lolita Ritmanis responsible for music for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as is the case when we tend to watch these shows, and especially the episodes that really get under our skin and annoy us, and we almost resent, it sometimes that trickles down into some of the other scores that we have. And I did my best to try and not make this an all zeros episode. I wanted it so badly, but I was like, I cannot absolutely disregard a true scorecard here. So in honor of what we've been doing here for 397 prior episodes, I will not just allow my emotions to completely score this episode. They have a little bit, but I'm not going to let it continue to continue here. It probably did affect my score a little bit. There's like there's music throughout. It did feel like there were a couple of pieces that were, I think, more on the like beyond style side of things with a little bit more guitar and drums than it
Mm-hmm.
was the synthesizer. But if you played me three different songs and told me to pick which one was in the Zeta project versus what was just kind of normal standard fare, I don't know that I could pick one out. And that's not, again, that's not an insult to Miss Ritmanis. We know that they're still making music to this day, as she's part of that Dynamic Music Partners, so she's very talented. I think this show suffers and infects everyone that it is involved with it. So I went with a 4 out of 10. I think the scene with Zeta, although visually distracted me, the scene with the river breaking through the dam and then kind of running down the river there, the intensity of that was probably the piece that stood out most for me, as well as like some of the quirkiness with Agent West having rocks hurled at him while he's riding that air scooter. But yeah, I just went with a 4 out of 10. It's fine, it's okay, but I really could have used something that to distract me from everything else that I hated about this episode, and I don't think the music did that.
Yeah, I gave it the exact same score actually. It's certainly not Mr. Ritmanis's fault that the rest of this episode is so rough, but yeah. Sometimes you're flailing, you're drowning. Imagine you're in a big river, for instance, and you're drowning and you need a lifeline, and unfortunately, Ms. Ripmanis was not able to single-handedly bring this up. So it's really more for just her. It's guilt by association, I feel, more than anything she personally did in this episode. But yeah, I also went with a 4 out of 10 for my music score.
All right, Liam. Well, that will take us to the final category for this week's episode, which is indeed our voice cast, which somehow ended up being quite large, despite being like taking place just in this little village. I guess we had so many little villagers that's why we had such a large voice cast for this week. But please take us through this week's voice cast, shall you?
Absolutely. So we have speaking of the weird toad boy, we have Miles Marisco, or Marsico, I should say, as Muley, as he is known.
Because he calls, we didn't even miss that part. His trick that he tries to impress Ro with is he gives a call like a donkey, which then calls the donkey over to him because he can impersonate the donkey so well. Thus, his name is Muley.
Yep, that's his one defining character trait, besides smelling bad. It's not Mr. Marsico's fault, or Mr. Marisco's fault, but not good.
Mm-mm.
Then we have William Schallert playing Judge Linden. He's fine. Like I said, that might be the better part of the episode. Is that bit, along with we'll mention here some of our other agent characters who are in smaller roles here. We have Kurtwood Smith again as Agent Bennett, Michael Rosenbaum as Agent West, and Dominique Jennings as Agent Rush. Once again, just a quick congratulations to Lauren Tom for getting off of this show after the first season. Great job, ma'am.
She pulled
What a
the
legend.
parachute ripcord and went on living her life and was 100 times better for it. Poor Michael Rosenbaum is just like, he is the only bright point in this because of his ability to pull something out of the ridiculousness of the Agent West character being the bumbling idiot every episode. Him screaming into the walkie-talkie, "Help, they have rocks. They've got flying rocks." That was the sole highlight of a 22-minute cartoon here, was him screaming that.
It's got flying rocks. Yes.
Yep. As that, of course, as Agent Bennett holds up the radio to the judge to listen to. So yes, very, very good stuff from Mr. Rosenbaum.
Absolutely. And then some actual notable names, unfortunately. Playing the role of the daughter, Amy, is Mae Whitman, who not only has done some other voices in the DCAU, including a young Lois Lane in Monkey Fun. People would know her as Anne from Arrested Development.
Oh, yes.
Or Roxy from Scott Pilgrim, or about probably 100 other things. She's very active. I think she also has a band. I think she's also a singer as well. But she's good for what she does. Yeah.
Yeah, she's fine. She's fine.
It's not her fault.
Correct.
I'll just say that.
Correct.
Similarly, with Richard McGonigal voicing John, the bigoted against technology, and therefore we should hate him, leader of the No Tech Society. Folks would know him maybe best for his role in video games. He's Sully in the Uncharted series, and also voiced Carmine Falcone in the Telltale Batman game as well. So really good voice actor. It's not his fault. Nothing that happens here is the voice actor's fault. But his character is pretty, as we've talked about, it's just so one note. And it's kind of like with a lot of these characters, it's played for comedy, and the comedy isn't funny. And again, that's not necessarily the any of the actors' fault, but it's not great, unfortunately.
Agreed. Yeah, he's okay in the role. I just hate the character. So again, not his fault. And I don't hate him in the way that the show wants you to hate them. I hate it for a very different reason, obviously.
Agreed.
So yeah.
And then, of course, we have poor Julie Nathanson and Diedrich Bader rounding out our cast as Ro and Zeta, respectively. Oh, and we get Sean Marquette back this week as the young Zeta actor. I believe that's a recast from our previous young Zeta, though he has also appeared in Batman Beyond. Again, there's not a lot for them. It's mostly just them reacting to look at these weirdos who don't understand technology. Maybe Miss Nathan gets a little bit more to do because as you pointed out, they have like one scene where they try to like talk about the sexism of the society, and then they just kind of move on. Um, so, but yeah, it's they're doing again. Everyone's doing their best. There's not a lot here, so it's unfunny comedy up and down the line for our voice cast this week.
Do you know what it probably would have saved this episode a little bit? And again,
Mhm.
try not to rewrite things, but I'm just thinking of this. Because in my head I can hear it. Imagine at the end, Zeta gives like his little like Zeta soapbox thing where he like after we get Richard McGonagall's John saying that, he sees that Zeta is not a soulless robot and we get like some other sort of like Zeta responds with like, and I've learned a lot here too about the value of whatever community, about the
Mhm.
ability to unplug, or that you don't need technology to have strong bonds or whatever, like something, some sort of, even if it was just a minuscule little compliment for what the society does and exists. But no, it's only the bad Amish that learn the lesson about how technology actually good. Anyway, back to the actors. Diedrich Bader's fine. I wish he had a little bit of soliloquy at the end there where he gets to share about how it's okay not to use technology too. But alas, they're fine in their roles here, and that's ultimately why I gave voice acting also a 4 out of 10. I think it's okay. But again, they suffer from the what they had to deal with there, unfortunately. So I ended up giving voice acting a 4 out of 10 to match my music.
Yeah, and I think for the first time this week, I like something even less than you did, so I gave it a 3 out of 10. Not much difference there, but again, it's not any of the actors' fault, but it's just again, it's flatly delivered unfunny comedy. It feels a little bit at times like one of the worst ends of like that edutainment thing, but like we keep saying, but without even like the moral lesson, like you said, like there should be something to the idea of like maybe Ro does learn that there's more to life than video games and music and
Right.
all of these things that she has, all of these distractions, and maybe being out in nature and experiencing how different societies work and how different people live in the world isn't a bad thing. And it's like,
Right.
nope, you don't get that. And again, that's not really the voice actor's fault, but that's all we're left then with is the comedic side, which is rough. So
Yep.
yeah, unfortunately, a 3 out of 10 for me.
Well, there we go. Well, that would begin to total. Oh, that sound, if you're not familiar, one that we don't hear very often here, almost solely reserved for Zeta Project these days. That is the negative bonus point sound, which means that that's right. I have 1 point to take away from my total score at this point, and that is for whoever decided to greenlight this episode, whoever that was, whatever this went through multiple drafts of like I cannot imagine like maybe some of the people were checked out at this point because they realized it's like, all right, guys, we're so frustrated. As we've said, I think almost every time we've done a Zeta Project episode, we know that Bob Goodman's idea for what this show was going to be was so bastardized essentially by the time we get to the end of season 1 that I don't even know that they thought that season 2 would get greenlit, and then they get season 2 and it seemed like it was even more, they were more hampered by what standards and practices from the network would let them show or not let them show, even worse. So I understand. I wouldn't put this solely on the shoulders of the creators, but how many people did this go through that somebody was like, "Yep, this is a great idea." All of you should be ashamed of yourselves that this ever saw the light of day in this form or fashion. That's why I'm giving it a negative bonus point. And when I total up my score, Liam, tied now, tied with Boy Genius, by the way. Also, a Paul Simon production here. I'm sorry, not Paul Simon, Paul Diamond production. We have a 7 out of 10 for my total score for this week's episode.
That's amazing. I am again, just by the virtue of hating it a little bit less than you did. I ended up with an 11 out of 40. Certainly not disagreement alarm worthy. But yeah, a little bit of a disparity with your double zeros to start us off. When you're through 2 of your 4 categories and your total score is still at 0, you know it's going to be has a good chance of finishing near the bottom of the list. And yeah, it's rough as far as rewatchability goes. No,
thank you.
In fact, I would go so far as to say that if someone ever wanted there, I don't know what the figure would be. We often joke about what the amount of money we would have to do to get the Underdwellers reviewed for a third time. And I think the last time we said 5 figures. I think like mid 6 for this. Like I'm unless we have a maniacal, like crazy millionaire who listens to our show, which I mean, if you do, please reveal yourself and give us money. But yeah, this was rough, man. This is in the running. Maybe it's recency bias because Hoop Squad's terrible.
Yep.
There's plenty of other episodes in our bad episode jar, but I'm like, this was like bad enough that I almost want to name it the River Rising jar, like as we once called it the Underdwellers jar. It's a rough one. It's a rough one to say the least.
Oh, it's so bad. Yeah, if you're a billionaire masochist and you want to see us suffer, by all means, become a supporter, become a one-time supporter. By the way, I was wrong. This is tied for second for the worst episode. I forgot somehow about the Hoop Squad. Hoop Squad's still reigning supreme after this episode with a 5 out of 40 from Yale. That one I did give a 7 also. So we have Hoop Squad as still reigning and defending worst episode in DCAU animated history. But this, tied for the worst Zeta Project episode and second lowest overall episode in the history of the DCAU. This episode's review will live in infamy. Can't wait to revisit this for our 2026 year in review and get mad all over again. In the meantime, let's get a palate cleanser here, shall we? Once again, brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. We have the IMDb synopsis for this second part of our Zeta Project future double feature. And of course, that episode is called Hologram Man. And Hologram Man originally debuted here in the United States on the Kids WB August the 10th, 2002.
That's right. So this is the official IMDb synopsis for Hologram Man, written by Robert Goodman and Joseph Kerr, with directing duties by Rob Davies, music by Lolita Ritmanis once again, and animation by DR Digital Co. And that synopsis reads as such. Zeta and Rho get involved in a plot by Brothers Day to destroy the lab where Zeta was created.
There you go.
Pretty good.
Pretty darn good.
Absolutely. So yes, in this one we kick it off with Zeta and Rho. We open with them outside of some sort of government facility or lab, as they're discussing that they have finally found apparently the location. This is a NSA debriefing outpost, and Rho remarks that it doesn't look very top secret, and Zeta says that's what makes it so brilliant, that it hides out in present day. Zeta explains that he had to used to report to this place for every mission back when he was still an infiltration unit, and they would have had every single one of his memories scanned and cataloged up until his fateful encounter with that Brothers Day group when he vowed to never destroy again. He's very concerned over the module in his head, knowing that it's not part of the Zeta Project nor Brothers Day. He's trying to figure out what exactly it is that created that doubt, that ability to disobey his programming. And so he thinks perhaps if he returns to the scene of his birth, that perhaps he'll find something. And as they step out of the elevator, as they're both disguised, that thing that Zeta sometimes forgets he can do, where he can also disguise Ro. He remembers he can do it in this one.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're walking around the facility, and then right across from them, wouldn't you know it, they see Dr. Selig. It's taken like 12 episodes, but they finally caught back up to him, seemingly. They see him head towards the Sub Rosa terminal, and Zeta can't quite go in there because he doesn't have the correct retinal scans. Apparently, it's a very top secret facility. And so they have to stand around and wait for him to come out before they can talk to him. We see that Selig goes into the room and downloads something. Meanwhile, at NSA headquarters, Agent Rush, who was, I believe, appeared in a previous episode, informs Agent Bennett that Selig was spotted at this facility. And Bennett is quite confused as Selig hasn't been out in the open for so long, over a year, they say. And they wish, and they gets a call. Rush then gets a call from Colonel Lamack, who wishes to meet Bennett at the Sub Rosa facility. So as Zeta and Ro stay close by and follow Selig, he heads to a junkyard of all places, where he meets up with Titus Sweet, the previously mentioned Brothers Day representative who we saw in those flashbacks in a previous episode. Selig is apparently trying to back out of some kind of deal between them. And when Sweet threatens him, Zeta springs into action, and we get, honest to God, like an action sequence in a Zeta Project episode. I'd almost forgotten that this could happen, that this is an action adventure show. And so we see the gangsters. Of course, we all have laser guns, no real guns in this here, but it is the future, so we'll allow it. As Zeta tussles with some of the thugs, Sweet gets away, and one of the thugs uses a crane and actually drops Zeta into this molten vat of molten metal. Seemingly, he's in trouble, but even though he has no weapons, he still does have that laser, and so he can cut a hole in the side of it, and he's able to save himself by exploding a fire extinguisher onto his heated up body. And as they confront Selig, who Ro was able to tackle, we reveal it's not a synthoid, but it is a scientist who apparently has a connection to the Zeta Project and has created a wrist gauntlet that allows regular old humans to also disguise themselves. It's Dr. Marcus Edmund. And as they head back to Mr. Edmund's apartment, he explains that Brothers Day is completely anti-synthoid, and that they're afraid that they're going to overthrow the human race. And so they want to go to the highest synthoid lab in the land, the Knossos, or the Knossos, as they say. And Ro is pretty confused as to what exactly they're talking about. So Zeta explains that that's the lab where he was actually first created, and that's the site of the Zeta Project. And so they have this guy, Dr. Edmund, is apparently going to stand in and pretend to be Dr. Selig, and help sneak Brothers Day onto the lab so that they can blow it up. And so we see that Zeta and Ro are in the apartment, and at first Zeta's just going to take Dr. Edmund's place and stand in, sort of a double agent thing. But right then and there, one of the Brothers Day soldiers walks in, and so they have to knock him out. So now not only does Zeta have to be on board, but also Ro has to stand in as this guy. So as they head onto the ship with the aforementioned Titus Sweet, and they are prepared to stand in, they are headed towards this lab in the middle of the ocean. And here's where things get kind of G.I. Joe for a while.
It's exactly everything about it is G.I. Joe, including some of the soldiers look like Cobra Commander with the masks and everything too. We'll maybe talk about in visuals. But so Ro and Zeta are disguised on the ship, impersonating the scientist and one of the members, Titus, of the group. So we see them trying to blend in as much as possible. We see as the submarine, the Brothers Day, is floating out towards this top secret base, we see that the NSA actually has intercepted them because they realize that back at the NSA that they've discovered that the real reason why somebody was in posing, we now learn, as Dr. Selig, the NSA decided ran some sort of filter over to determine who was actually that it was actually Edmund that went in and disguised himself using the hologram as our dear Dr. Selig. They determined that he pulled the information and has likely provided it, so everybody's on high alert. The submarine that is floating out towards the base gets intercepted, and they're stopped. They get told that everything's on high alert. So we have Zeta, who's disguised as Dr. Edmund, disguised as Dr. Selig. So the dude disguised as the dude disguised as another dude is there on the. Yes, that's right. Zeta did it first. So we see that he is he says that everything's fine. He's on his way out to his laboratory. The NSA says that's all fine and dandy, but they're on high alert, so they're going to need to come aboard. So it's at this point that the leader of Brothers Day starts freaking out. This causes the NSA to start shooting at them. There's return fire that's attempted as the leader calls for Roe, who's disguised as Titus, to call on the to start shooting on the NSA. She starts freaking out, so she and Zeta sneak away, getting into one of the sub's escape pods. They seemingly do so without anybody noticing, but then the leader of Brothers Day looks over and happens to see them getting in the pod, and then he has an idea how to use the pods to his advantage. So he takes the sub a little bit deeper. The NSA continue their onslaught, and he actually explodes using some of the charges that they have on board. He explodes the other pod, giving the NSA thought that the entire ship was destroyed, when in fact it was just one of the escape pods. So the NSA seemingly is going to start looking through the wreckage. This causes the submarine to sink to the ground, allowing the Brothers Day to continue their advancement towards the secret base. So Zeta and Rho finally do arrive to the secret base. That's where Zeta and Rho start walking around. We also see that the leader of Brothers Day, Titus Sweet, boards this secret vessel also with two of his men, and they begin to start sneaking around on board as well at the same time. We then see Agent Bennett also arriving, so there's this convergence that happens all at the same time on this floating science lab. So then we see Bennett meeting with some security guards to find out if Zeta was on board Sweet's sub. Then he sees that the Titus Sweet's group is actually on board sneaking around. So then security attempts to chase them down. Meanwhile, Bennett starts chasing after Sweet himself. They get into a little bit of a fight and forces Sweet down, where we learn an interesting bit here that Bennett maybe was not aware of. He asks Sweet where Zeta is, and says that he knows that Brothers Day has been hiding the synthoid, and that's where Sweet admits that actually we don't have anything to do with synthoids. We hate synthoids. Are they non-techs or no-techs themselves? We don't know. There's no tie in here to the previous episode, but they definitely, much like the no-techs, they do not like synthoids. So we learn that here from the conversation there. This is news to Bennett, obviously. So then based on that information, Bennett runs off to try and find Zeta and figure out what he's doing on board. Meanwhile, Zeta and Rho find their way into the very lab that was built by Dr. Selig. And that's where, as they're reminiscing about the Zeta project, Dr. Selig actually walks up right behind them, and Zeta is actually able to interact with the good doctor for the very first time. He even includes a fascinating secret about the creation of Zeta, where he reveals that there was a module in Zeta's head that was designed to be a sort of conscience for the robot that he installed secretly without the NSA's knowledge. That way he would not turn into a killer. He says, however, that unfortunately the module never activated, and that Zeta just went on becoming a killer at that point. And just before Zeta begins to interject and share this information, we look over and see Agent Bennett is there, also hearing this information, which he seems to take in. But at that point, just as things appear to be going well for Zeta, and we're going to get a resolution to this, bombs go off. The explosives that Sweet had brought on board all begin detonating, and the entire personnel from the lab have to be evacuated, including Dr. Selig, who, along with his assistant, jump into one of the pods, escaping as Zeta screams after him that he actually is Zeta. Selig apparently did not hear him, though, as he goes out. So this escape pod jettisons out and flies through the air. We see that Sweet recognizes that one of the escape pods is going out with Selig in it. He decides to head up top, and actually he's quite the shot, because his little laser gun that he shoots is able to hit point blank into one of the wings for the escape pods. This causes it to crash land into the water below, as Zeta and Ro look on in disbelief that Dr. Selig is apparently dead. So unfortunately, we realize at this point, as Zeta verbally confirms, that the only person who knows that he has a conscience and is not an actual killer robot is now dead and unable to prove it. So Zeta has Selig's watch with him, and then he and Ro ultimately end up escaping the lab. Unknown to both of them, as we get sort of the Marvel credits post sequence here. We see it's pre-credits, of course, but it's done in the same style here. We do cut out to the water as we see the wreckage, a scan over it, and then a single hand breaks through the water. And interestingly, it is a robot that generates human flesh, as we fade to black on what ultimately was, Liam, the series finale for the Zeta Project. We still have one episode, but this one was written to be the series finale for the episode, and that's where we end this week's episode. So, as far as plot goes, and maybe it's because it's juxtaposed against that previous episode that I hated so much, but it really is hard to think of a better episode. I think for tension purposes that we've covered for the Zeta Project. I think from start to finish, this episode, it doesn't. I mean, it was written by Bob Goodman, who obviously had a specific idea in mind, as we just talked about, for what this series would be. He used this episode to advance the plot, and sort of feels like he tried to back them into a corner to, like, I'm going to write this as a cliffhanger in the hopes that we get a third season out of this. They ultimately did not. But the episode is written so well. Honestly, I'm shocked. Like, if every episode was written this well, and I'm not saying that's really sustainable or even possible with a 13 or 14 episode season, to have every single episode advance the plot. I mean, even the best Netflix shows, or, the shows that have been heralded as some of the greatest television of all time, have episodes that people just kind of scratch their head at and feel like filler. But boy, I think this one was written in a really great, fun way that not only feels important, but there is tension that builds throughout the episode. There's things that you're kind of rewarded for remembering different parts of the series, things that are callbacks to things that have not been mentioned maybe since the first couple of episodes of season 1. And this whole thing leads to Zeta finally getting in touch with his creator, only to have that snatched out of his hand. We learn more about Zeta's background. We learn about this chip that ultimately was the thing that made him different. It was intentionally installed. We get this allusion to what Selig had as a potential purpose for him. He alludes that there was something bigger. He had a plan for Zeta based on this installation that would have obviously been followed up in a season 3. But man, it builds really well. And again, maybe it's just how terrible the last episode was, but this one looks like, I don't know, like an Academy Award winning film compared to, some of the other things that we watch from this show, I feel like. And this one has a really interesting story that I think was played out maybe as the best that we got in this entire run.
Yeah, I think it's really solid. I think, again, there's stakes to it. There's peril. There's a certain sense of urgency to it. We have all these converging groups because, Bennett is not like a huge part of this episode, but he is part of it. And then you mix in the Brothers Day crew, and then you have is Zeta finally gonna reveal himself to his creator, basically, and once again it kind of slips through his figure, so you have that kind of bittersweet moment. Yeah, it's really, really solid. I had one kind of nitpick note, which is that while they're on the sub, and I think this is in the DCAU wiki production and consistency section, which is that Zeta does something to the bombs. He appears to deactivate them, but then they're just planted, and Sweet has a button that blows them all up. So I guess he didn't do a good job.
Interesting.
But that's the only that's really but if that is very much a nitpick. Otherwise, I think it's like I said, it's exciting. It's in really there's some really nice moments. We can maybe talk about in voice acting too of this adventure that Zeta and Ro have been on for 2 seasons now, and like finally getting somewhere. And you get the sense that Ro is happy for Zeta finally getting a little bit closer to uncovering what it is. And then you get this additional layer of mystery with the all these other synthoids, and now we know there's synthoids with human skin on there, so they're even like there's like this other generation of infiltration units even beyond what Zeta is. And so that's quite fascinating as well. So and then you have this kind of bittersweet cliffhanger of Selig seemingly going down with the ship, so to speak. And then unfortunately we'll never get to know what the reveal would have been. We do have some ideas, thanks I think to some interviews that Robert Goodman has done over the years. But yeah, as far as this episode itself, it's a really compelling 22 minutes, which is something we almost never say about a Zeta Project episode. So they went out on a high note, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's why I ended up giving plot an 8 out of 10, which I'd have to check the archives, but probably one of, if not the highest score that I've ever given a Zeta Project episode. And I think it just goes to show that as much as we hate on this show a lot and have fun doing so, there was something here I think that could have been without maybe some of the meddling from BS&P and whoever else was involved, and maybe getting one consistent vision for what the series would be instead of having 10 to 12 different writers on the show, well, and kind of muddying the waters a little bit here, maybe having 2 or 3 people as some of the, I mean, that's not to say Batman the Animated Series is probably the exception, but the majority of the episodes, the rest of the DCAU writers like by name for the most part by the time that the series is done. You may have a one-off here that's written by somebody that didn't really play in the sandbox, but I think you have so many voices and names that you end up seeing kind of tied to some of these episodes that were directly involved with cartoons that had nothing, like no similarity to the DCAU, and people who just kind of didn't understand what the characters here were, that maybe that sort of muddied the waters a little bit and made the stories watered down and just sort of like any other cartoon fare. It's like, oh, well, I've written 5 episodes for the tattooed mutants of Hollywood or whatever, and this is just another one of those. I'm just gonna write this. Whereas again, I think Bob Goodman being a writer for this and caring so much about the character and understanding what his vision was for this, and having some really great writing credits, to his name with previously working on DCAU shows, he kind of had an idea of what the tone he wanted for it, and I think it plays out very well here in this episode. So, yeah, it's a shame. Ultimately, I think it's a direct reflection of what we ended up getting for a lot of the series. It's sad that this is the exception to the series, because you could have told a much more interesting story here, and obviously we still have one episode to go. But the fact that I gave it an 8, I think, says a lot about it here. What was your score?
Yeah, I give the exact same 8 out of 10. it's like I said, it's just really solid. It's really compelling. You really feel for Zeta. There's an interview that Bob Goodman did with World's Finest at the time, and talked about how much the sort of, yes, there's this sort of fugitive element to it, but it's obviously the idea of the sort of the search for family and belonging it was kind of one of his big tenets for the show, with Zeta looking for his, essentially his father in Dr. Selig, and Ro being on the hunt for her family as well. And so how important it was, even though it was sort of mandated that they could do some kind of cliffhanger, that he would also give it some kind of hopeful piece, so at least you get the information that Zeta's conscience came from Dr. Selig, and then also that Bennett has now heard that maybe Zeta isn't part of Brothers Day, and isn't the bloodthirsty killer bot that he thinks he is. So you sprinkle in some optimistic notes, even though you didn't necessarily get to finish the story the way you wanted to. So I appreciated that as well. I think it's bittersweet, but in a weird way, it kind of reminds me of the often controversial finale to the Teen Titans show, which is sort of all built around not getting the answers at the end and saying goodbye before you're ready. And I think that this episode kind of, even if that wasn't necessarily the plan, and obviously they were hopeful that they'd get to come back and finish their story someday, at the very least it does kind of strike those same notes, where it's like, yeah, unfortunately we don't always get the answers we want out of life. And so that kind of bittersweet note kind of works, that he's so close to finally getting that interaction and revealing himself to Dr. Selig, and then it slips away once again. So yeah, I think really, really strong job done by the plot this week.
Absolutely. Let's see if that will continue with our next category, which will be animation and visuals, Liam. That, once again, done by DR Digital Co., formerly or currently known as DR Movie Co., one of those. Yeah, this is another one that I think, you talked about G.I. Joe and the story kind of shifting into a G.I. Joe. It is kind of funny. I think that a lot of that final little bit there does feel very much G.I. Joe inspired, whether it's the old G.I. Joe cartoon or maybe just based on some of the toys. But there is definitely G.I. Joe in the visual aspect of that final third of the episode or so. But yeah, I think this episode does not look as choppy as the last episode. I think things look very smooth. I like the way the characters move. There's certainly a lot more action. Characters are certainly, I mean, the hologram bit, having like a hologram emitter is kind of a little bit goofy. That technology, it can work with robots but hadn't previously worked with human beings, is a little interesting. But that obviously is a bit of a game changer also, as we get to see Ro utilize it. I think it's funny when we see her as this hulking African American man, but having Julie Nathanson's voice come out of it is a very funny visual, to say the least. When she's disguised as Colonel Lamach. I kept calling her disguised as Titus Sweetie, but that's the guy that's the guy who's the actual leader. She was disguised as the Colonel. But yeah, that's a funny visual. I think the sneaking around a little bit and the phasing into different things looks great. I do like as they're touring the android factory or the robot factory. Like, there's definitely, I feel like, some Easter eggs in there. There was definitely a robot that looked like C-3PO at one point, from Star Wars fame, of course. I'm sure there's probably other Easter eggs that I missed in that, but the bit where Ro gets freaked out as like as like the skin is applied to the android is pretty interesting also. As we see it essentially just looks like a like one of those things that squeezes the frosting out onto a cupcake, just squeezes on top of this robot's body and the skin melts down on top of it. He gets freaked out by that. I liked that. Yeah, but I think honestly, I think that final little bit there, as I mentioned, some of the soldiers looking like the famous Cobra Commander shield face design, not the hooded
Hmm.
design, but the shield face design. I imagine that probably wasn't accidental. Some of I think the design of the circular our little laboratory there that what do we call it, the kenosis or gnosis lab
Hmm.
lab there looks even like one of those famous GI Joe play sets. It's like a command center, Cobra Command Center or something like that, that is sort of shaped like that round, has that distinct round shape to it. So yeah, I think visuals were notably much better for this than the prior episode. I think there's a lot of fun in the different visuals that they had in the laboratories. So I ended up giving animation visuals a really strong, again, 8 out of 10 for this episode. What about you?
Yeah, I went just 1 point lower at a 7 out of 10. But again, yeah, I think it's really strong. The like I said, like the all the designs, all the way, all this the ocean lab and the I think they call them Condor jets. Like that's so straight out of as GI Joe, as we said. And I love the way they look, and the kind of standoff between the jets and the sub, and that's kind of a tense sequence, and all of that, and the fake outs, and then yeah, that last shot of the robotic hand coming out of the water, which I guess we can say, according to Bob Goodman, was the his assistant. If we didn't already say that, that's I guess she is his synthoid bodyguard, not doing a great job between this and the episode where she let him get frozen. But you know, everybody has bad days at work, I guess. But yeah, I think that final shot of the hand sticking out of the water is pretty good, and maybe one of the stronger visuals of the whole series. So I like that. I like some of the wacky different disguises. We get a lot of different Zeta and Rho disguises throughout this episode. That's fun as well. And I think the whole junkyard fight scene with him and the Brothers Day guys is a lot of fun too, and him kind of puzzling out how to not melt in the furnace or whatever is pretty cool too. So some really good stuff.
There we go. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which again is music. And once again, Lolita Ritmanis responsible for this week's music. This I felt much more akin to, I'm like, okay, this feels related to a Batman Beyond show. Like this is much more in the vein. Like everything about the episode we talked about when we crapped on it, but River Rising, it was like this could have been any show. This does not feel anything that was adjacent to what we saw on Batman Beyond. The music, I feel like much more rock driven for this. There is some synth, I think. Of course, the Zeta sort of sound effect that plays throughout whatever the theme song is. Whatever that instrument, I mean, it's all synthesizer, but whatever tool they went with that to kind of give it that high pitched melody sound that plays, of course, in some of the music sequences here. But of course, we have the tension when the NSA shows up when they're in the sub. We have the tension that shows up when Zeta's trying to rescue who he thinks is Dr. Selig initially there. The music plays with that as the conflict occurs there, him being dropped into the molten, melted down metal is great. And then I think towards the end there, the uh, little verbiage that Dr. Selig has when he's sharing with Zeta, the little soft moments. Also, I feel like the music plays through there, and cutting away to Agent Bennett who's listening in, and that kind of punctuates
Mhm.
that scene very well. And then ultimately, when we get Dr. Selig's ship shot down, I think that the music there kind of does play into that tragedy there of Zeta screaming Dr. Selig's name, and after him as he's leaving, and then when it gets shot down, the realization that his one hope at freedom has apparently been killed. There's some sadness that plays in there, which I really like there. Anything that stuck out for you that I wasn't able to mention there?
No, yeah, I think that bit at the end when Zeta's calling out to Selig as he's being rushed to the escape pod, is the music that plays there is really strong as it it kind of swells there, and that dramatic tension is really really strong as well. So yeah, I agreed with all your notes. I actually gave music a pretty darn strong 7 out of 10.
Nice. I just went 1 point lower. I went a 6 out of 10, but still much. I think this is a case kind of the inverse of what we were talking about before, where maybe music would have settled at a 5 or 10, but sometimes the rising tide lifts all
Mm-hmm.
boats. In this case, to borrow yet another water metaphor from our first episode, but in this case, it didn't drown out the rest of the episode. It kind of lifted everything with it here. So I think the music definitely plays into having it. I mean, it was also given an opportunity to play a bigger role in a story that's interesting. So I think that also says something about how closely these things tend to be interwoven, and how just good music, without any important visuals tied to it, sometimes can be detrimental to the overall score there. So a symbiotic relationship between the two in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our final category of the day, which is going to be voice acting. And once again, we have quite the large cast here for this entire episode. Let's go ahead and go through our voice actors for this episode, shall we?
That's right. A lot of familiar names, though maybe in roles we don't know them from. But for instance, we have briefly Kevin Michael Richardson playing the Brothers Day agent of Curtis, who is
Oh,
the one
that's
that
the
gets.
name of the guy. I had I did
Yes.
not one time get that character's
Yeah.
name right here. I knew it was Kevin Michael Richardson based on his voice. I was like, oh, yeah, that's Kevin Michael Richardson. But yeah, did not get the actual character's name there. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, understandable. I also missed it until I was rereading my notes. But yes, we also have another fun one is Roger Bumpus playing the sub captain who's piloting the ship, who folks would of course best know as the voice of Squidward on SpongeBob and probably 300 other characters on that show. But
Mhm.
most famously Squidward. Fun to have that one. I guess by 2002, yeah, SpongeBob would have been on the air for a few years, so he's playing another undersea character to a degree, which is fun there. But I'm not sure if that's why he was cast, but we'll pretend it was. But we have Chad Einbinder as the squad leader of the I think the agents on board the lab, and Greg Berger as well playing one of the other agents. We have Gray Delisle, or Gray Griffin, as I believe she's now known, playing the role of Andrea Donoso, the as we find out according to well, we don't see it, we just know she's Dr. Selig's bodyguard. You only
Mhm.
That's the only on-screen confirmation we have. But I think again, if this show had gone on longer, she probably would have maybe become a regular character in the show. But yeah, I mean it's fun that she's in here. She doesn't have much to do here, but of course the voice of Catwoman in the Arkham games and 3 million other voices across children's television over the last 30 years. Speaking of which, we also have Dr. Marcus Edmond, the guy standing in as Dr. Selig. We have Michael McKean, who is definitely one of those like you'd know him if you saw him guys. He's maybe most famous for something like This Is Spinal Tap and the
Mhm.
recent sequel that spawned there, and but a lot of great work in comedy and drama for Mr. McKean over the years, playing Dr. Edmund. I think he does a good job as this weird middleman character that we have.
Yeah, I would say he also
We
does.
have
He's also
playing.
the voice of Ian Peake in Batman Beyond previous to this, and
Oh yes.
I think he gets a turn as the Joker in the flashback sequence from the Dick Sprang era in the Legends of the Dark Knight
Oh,
episode.
there you go. Yeah, so very prolific voice actor as well. So this live action and animation has done Mr. McKean well. We have playing the role of the Brothers Day leader Titus Sweet or Sweetie. We have, in fact, Robert Costanza. Speaking of recognizable voice, the voice of Harvey Bullock, and he's kind of doing that voice, which is funny, but also like he's a mob guy. Like where
Mhm.
Sopranos was on the air by now. Like he of course like this guy was born to play like a threatening Italian man. Like and
Absolutely.
he's good here.
Yeah, he's great. It is a little one of those things. Is a little distracting because it's like it's Harvey Bullock clearly, and he's just
Mhm.
so recognizable in that role. Especially the only reason we're watching this is because it's DCAU related. So maybe if you're a 8-year-old kid that hadn't watched Batman the animated series, you wouldn't have picked that out. But because we are who we are, it's like it's just it's a little too close to home here. But it's fine. He does a great job. I actually thought I was like, he gets a little bit more. He has a little bit more dynamic personality here that he gets to show off in this, and he's just not. It's because he's evil, He gets to show a little darker side of Bullock that we didn't ever get for the DCAU version of Bullock. So this character definitely has that dark evil side. I like when he talks about how they don't do synthoids in Brothers Day. So yeah, he gets some interaction with a couple of different characters here, and it's pretty fun to hear.
Absolutely. And then we'll rapid fire through some of our NSA people here. We briefly have Dominique Jennings as Agent Rush once again. We briefly have Michael Dorn as Colonel Lamach returning here. Of course, Mr. Dorn, the voice of Calabac and also our original voice of Steel in
Mhm.
Superman the Animated Series, and also, Star Trek or whatever. But most importantly, Calabac. No, but I mean, great recognizable voice on Mr. Dorn, and we get to hear him and Kurtwood Smith as Agent Bennett interact. Kind of again, not a lot for any of those agency characters to do. They're setting up building blocks for a story we unfortunately know will never be resolved, but they're all doing their part. They're all doing a solid job.
Yeah, they're all great. I think I mean, again, hard to nitpick here. They all have a lot to do. They're all working together in different characters interacting that we kind of previously hadn't seen. Unfortunately, don't get to see really interact again. But yeah, I think they're all fantastic. To be honest, I ended up giving voice acting a very strong 8 out of 10 because of that. I think Mr. Bader's turn as Zeta. I think, as we already kind of mentioned, that sequence where he's reaching out for reaching out for Dr. Selig as he's leaving and screaming like I'm Zeta, I'm him. Like I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was really great. Like I was like that might be the best work that Mr. Bader. I mean, he did fantastic work throughout this, but that might
Yeah,
be the best sequence he did in the entire series here. Again, saving his best for last. While I'm relieved we only have one more episode of this, and then we can just bask in the glory of Mr. Bader's, Brave and the Bold Batman, or some of his other roles that he ended up doing. It is refreshing and comforting to hear. It's like, you know what, he really did his best to get the most he could out of this, and I think that sequence there is one of the best that for the entire run here.
absolutely. There's a really sweet moment between Miss Nathanson and him when he kind of has the realization. He's like, oh, this is where I was born, this is where the Zeta Project began. And she says something like, oh, well, I guess you win, but next time it's my turn, or something, as in like, we found where you were born, now we need to go find where I am. It's this really kind of sweet, we talk Bob Goodman talked about a lot again about wanting to have this sort of familial vibe, maybe against I never, yeah, and there's really not any kind of romantic implications at all between Zeta and Ro, thankfully, because
Hmm.
I don't even know how that would work. But one's a child and the other one's a robot. I don't know how
Right.
that would work anyway. But yeah, there's just this really sweet brother sister vibe. Like you feel like Ro is so happy that Zeta has found some information finally, and is finally on the cusp of finding out what he had and what he's lost. And then if I didn't mention him, I think I may have skipped over him. Hal Linden voiced Dr. Selig once again here. Yeah, good job. Again, he's got some exposition to dole out as the guy who explains that he created this special extra program inside Zeta, and he's afraid that it didn't work. Obviously, not knowing that Zeta's been on the run and refusing to obey his programming for seemingly years now. But yeah, overall, I think voice acting is very strong. I don't think I gave my score yet, so yeah, I also gave it a 8 out of 10.
There we go. All right, Liam. Well, that will begin to wrap us up for the second review of the day. So let's go ahead and total everything up here. And with my final scores totaled up here, I ended up with a very strong 30 out of 40 for the Zeta Project series finale, although it is not our final review. As we mentioned, we still have one single episode left. What about you?
Yeah, I ended up with the exact same final score, that
Wow.
being 30 out of 40. So, yeah, this has to be the first episode, maybe at all, that one of us is put into the 30s for Zeta, but certainly I would think one where we were both in the 30s. So,
Yeah.
yeah, rarefied air. If you were gonna rewatch an episode of the Zeta Project, I think it's probably this one. like,
Like you would
as a
watch the first episode of the series and then maybe just the last episode of
yeah,
the
maybe the
Beyond.
Batman one in between. Yeah, the
Right,
Batman
exactly.
crossover, and then yeah, the last episode. That would probably be it.
Probably wouldn't miss much, yeah, by doing that either. You'd miss a lot of crap today. But yeah, it's a good episode, and that's something, as you mentioned, that we don't really get to say a whole lot around here, especially when it comes to the Zeta project. So we are as someone once trademarked, fair and balanced here on the DCAU review, and we believe in giving accurate scores wherever we come to them. So that includes if we like a Zeta Project episode, we are going to be honest about it. So. Like the rest of the media out there, of which we are not actually a part of, we are trustworthy, just as they are. So we proved that today, I think. All right, Liam, well, that will begin to wrap us up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, we would love your support for the podcast, and you have multiple different ways to do that, as we talked about. You can also always support us by following us on social medias at DCAU Review, Twitter X, Instagram, all the ancillary ones. We're all there. The best spot to get a hold of us, though, is usually Instagram and or Twitter X. So if you have thoughts on this episode or episodes for that matter, and you want to share your opinions with us, by all means, where do these episodes rank in your personal listings for best and or worst of the Zeta Project? Please let us know at DCAU Review. Follow us while you're there. That helps us out a lot. You can also, of course, support the podcast by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast application of choice, whether that's Spotify. If you're there, listening to us there, please leave us a 5-star review. You can also always comment on the episodes each and every week. We do our best to try and get back to the comments fairly quickly. And so if you have a thought, you're listening there, drop us a comment there in the episode itself. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a 5-star review there. And if you leave a 5-star review there and we read your review on the air, we'll send you a little thank you gift for doing so if you live within the US. So please consider doing that, because that helps us out a lot and is a good way to support us. You can also subscribe to us on your YouTube channel of choice, on the YouTube platform through our YouTube channel. Head over to youtube.com and search for DCAU Review, or if you just head over to DCAUreview.com, the link is there for our YouTube page, or you can check out the show notes regardless of where you're listening and find us there. Even if you don't listen to us on the YouTube page, we invite you to please like us and subscribe there. If you do, that helps us out, because YouTube, believe it or not, is becoming a pretty strong contender for where most people go to get their podcasts these days. So please consider subscribing there. That way more people that do listen to their podcasts will find us. Last but not least, as we talked about multiple times already, the best way to support the podcast is through buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. And remember, if you're a part of that Super Friend monthly support tier, you have the opportunity to ask us a question, hear your answer on the air. And this week, our friend Zach is back with a question for us about these episodes.
That's right, and actually, he bucked the trend a little bit by saying that he's not going to ask questions about the specific episode, and instead had a general question about the series, which we'll allow it. It's
Sure.
Zeta.
Yeah.
We'll take what we can get, Zach. But he says, after reading the info on the IMDb and DCAU wiki pages, it seems like there were a lot of obstacles where this show, the Zeta Project, was concerned. It sounds like the network involvement made things pretty tough. Do you think with a little more freedom, the show could have been better, or was it always doomed?
Dang. That is a good question, Zach. But one that I feel like we tend to answer it pretty frequently because I think we've said it a couple of dozen times probably at this point,
Hmm.
but um, we try to review these with a grain of salt and understanding of what what Bob Goodman had in mind when he created the show versus what ended up happening to it because of the meddling. I think, as we stated, with what ultimately this finale for the series ended up being, I think it really could have been different. I
Hmm.
think given maybe a smaller group of writers for the team instead of having 10 to 12 different writers. I'm pulling that number out of the air.
Right.
I don't know. It could be fewer, it could be more, but it feels like there's probably much more involvement from people who were brought in for an episode or two episodes here or there versus what seemed to be in some of the other shows kind of more of a rotating cast of writers. And with that, you always had somebody, a producer, you had somebody that sort of seemingly was overseeing that, shaping that a little bit more, whether it was Alan Burnett or Paul Dini or Bruce Timm or Dan Reba or, James Tucker or Dwayne McDuffie or, later on. Like there was always somebody that was kind of shaping things a little bit to make sure that it seemed to fit the narrative of whatever show it was. Here, there are times where, as we've discussed, some of these episodes don't even feel like they're in the same world as any of these other shows. It's not even in the same world as this show that began, like the universe that this this show started here. When you have episodes like Kid Genius or the episode that we reviewed today with the River Rising, it's just like these do not feel like they were birthed from the same concepts. You just kind of slapped these characters within this story frame here, and we're like, "Yep, that's another episode of this show." So yeah, I do think without meddling, and I think with a little bit more of a dynamic and tunnel vision from maybe a smaller group of writers and directors here,
Hmm.
I think you could have gotten something that was far better than what ended up being the final product here, which is largely a forgettable and, as we saw today, borderline hateable forms of episodes of animated series. So yes, yeah, I agree. I do think it could have been better. What about you?
Yeah, I totally agree there. I mean, obviously we're always going to be in favor of the people, the creative people involved getting to see their vision through. Again, who knows? Maybe it still wouldn't, like to Zach's point, maybe it still wouldn't have been a home run, but at least you could have seen what the original idea was. And we know that shows, have growing pains. If you look at the first few episodes of Batman the Animated Series, there's some wacky ones in there. Maybe some that we have more nostalgia for, like the Last Laugh and some of those, but they don't really fit the tone of the show when you pick them out, when you look amongst what it became once it sort of found its voice. And so yeah, if the writers had been able to, and directors and everyone had been able to work on this show and kind of figure out the true voice of this show and how it works. And also I think maybe if they had tried to keep it a bit closer in tone, I understand it's a spin-off to Batman Beyond, you don't want it to be exactly the same, but it really very rarely feels like the same, like the idea that this is set in the same universe as a Batman show, as we often joke about, is kind of ridiculous. So yeah, I wish they had been able to make it a little bit more straightforward and maybe kept to that original, because I think certainly after like the Pixar renaissance of the 90s, some of the great animated works, it's like I do think even when you're making media that is essentially for children or primarily for children, like kids are smarter than we give them, like than a lot of people give them credit for, especially entertainment executives. Like you can challenge them, you can let them, explore and learn, and maybe they don't get every bit of nuance. We certainly didn't when we watched Batman the Animated Series when we were, 6 or 7 years old, but we still liked it, and it's something that rewards you when you come back when you're a bit older, if you come back to it. So yeah, I would always be in favor of letting I do think there was potential here for something a bit more substantial that unfortunately we never got.
Thank you again, Zach, for asking that question. And if you yourself would like to get in your own question and hear the answer on the air here, we invite you once again, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and support the podcast at the Super Friend tier today. Liam, believe it or not, we've reached the end of the month of April, and which means we're turning the calendar page and we have the month of May coming here. Interestingly, though, kind of in a weird spot here, as this is episode 398. We have episode 399 next week, if my math is correct. And then 2 weeks from now, we will be covering episode 400. So the milestone 400 will come in 2 weeks here. So in the meantime, we're going to do something break ranks. Usually we start a new series starting the first of the month, the first Saturday of the month. And technically we are starting a new series, but instead of going back to the DCAU, we're actually going to head to one of our favorite Elseworlds destination for a fun review for the first Saturday in the month of May.
That's right. We are heading back to, I believe, the first ever Elseworld we ever visited, but it's been a little while since we've returned. And that is to the world of Batman, the Brave and the Bold. And next week we are talking about the very fun and very silly Crisscross Conspiracy episode, which features not only Batman, but Nightwing, Batgirl, and even the Golden Age Batwoman back in action in this one. So a lot of fun Bat family hilarity to be had in that episode next week.
There we go. And a little Easter egg, something related to this episode will be featured in our landmark 400th episode. So maybe you can figure out what that's going to be by next week. But if not, we invite you to tune in for next week's episode, where we will reveal our topic for episode 400 and, of course, review that very fun and outstanding episode of Batman, the Brave and the Bold. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU.
Adios.